There is a moment when man realizes that his value is not proven in arguments, but in absences. He stops trying to be understood and begins to be whole. Its silence is not empty. It's full of decisions he's made with himself. He does not remain silent out of weakness, but out of respect for his own peace. Before, he talked too much. He tried to explain himself, tried to convince, tried to fix what had already broken. Now he understood that there is a kind of dignity that is only born when the mouth is closed and the heart is withdrawn. He doesn't need her to understand anymore. He just needs to continue being who he is. Silence becomes his dwelling place, a space where words no longer have the weight they used to, because what matters is no longer outside. As the world screams for attention, it finds strength in what is not said. His every absence is a silent reminder that he doesn't belong anywhere he needs to be proven, she notes. Not at first, perhaps, but time makes his absence echo in places that his presence no longer reached, because the man who chose himself no longer tries to make himself noticed, and precisely for this reason it becomes unforgettable. Silence is the portal of maturity. It is in it that man realizes that he does not need to win any emotional battle to keep his peace. He does not run away from conflict, he only transcends it. He learned that not every sound deserves a response, and not every provocation deserves presence. By choosing silence, he does not disappear from the world. He only makes it clear that the world no longer dictates his existence. He does not beg for understanding. He offers his absence as final proof of who he has become. Explanation does not always educate. Sometimes the more you talk, the less you are heard. The Stoic man understands that there is a limit where words cease to touch and begin to beg. And when that happens, he is silent, not out of weakness, but out of clarity. He realizes that the true teaching is not in the speech, but in the decision. His departure, his absence, his stillness, all this speaks louder than any justification could achieve. He doesn't want to convince anymore. He just leaves with the dignity of someone who has learned to save himself. The woman in this process feels what words have never been able to convey. The space he leaves behind him is pedagogical. Every inch of absence reveals a limit that he did not negotiate. And it is in this empty space that she finds the questions she never bothered to ask before. The removal of the upright man is not revenge, it is liberation. He doesn't take revenge because he doesn't hold grudges. He just understands that there are places where his energy doesn't flourish, and so he chooses to go. No shouting, no accusing, no drama. It just will. As he moves away, he reconstructs his presence away from eyes that did not know how to see him. He is reunited with his essence, and in this encounter, he learns that the greatest respect is the one you have for yourself. The explanation he needed to give has already been given by the firmness of his silence. The world may not understand, but he no longer lives for that. Their removal is an act of profound teaching, because the absence of a whole man is the greatest lesson anyone can receive. There is something profoundly transformative in simply not being where it was, once so sought to be accepted. When the man decides not to insist, not to cry out, not to beg for space, he takes a stand, not with arrogance, but with clarity. He comes to understand that insisting where there is no reciprocity is a gesture that hurts. That accepting emotional crumbs is too high a price for those who have learned the value of peace itself. And then he leaves. No slammed door, no final message, just go. And it is in this silent disappearance that everything changes, because what once seemed guaranteed is now absence. The woman feels it, not for the loss of someone who screamed for attention, but for the absence of the one who chose his own path. He is no longer there, and this teaches. The man who is absent with wisdom does not need to be remembered with words. Its absence is a mark, a reflection, a shadow that is projected over the attitudes of those who previously did not know how to value him. She begins to see what she previously ignored. He understands that the space that was not given to him in a natural way is not worth being occupied by force, and by not begging for a place, he conquers the greatest of all, his own. A place where no one can drive him out, where he is enough. His absence is not a fault. It is a reconfigured presence, a silent declaration of self-love that echoes louder than any speech ever could. Self-control is not the absence of feeling. It is the conscious decision not to let uncontrolled feelings dictate your behavior. The stoic man feels everything, but it chooses. He is not pushed by the waves. He sails. While the world awaits reactions, explosions, hasty responses, it offers the unthinkable, serenity. Not because he is indifferent, but because he has learned that nothing that comes from imbalance can build something lasting. He does not allow himself to be the scene of other people's chaos. Chaos screams, tests, presses, but he remains, not as one who flees, but as one who anchors himself. He understands that true power lies in staying centered when everything around him wants to bring him down. And this confuses, disarms, deconstructs those who tried to shake him. This man has become a mystery, not by manipulation, but by maturity. The woman who once knew how to provoke no longer understands how to access it, because he no longer delivers his reactions. He delivers selective attendance. Each time he chooses not to respond to the urge, he asserts his freedom. He proves himself worthy of himself, and in that control, he finds peace. Not the artificial peace of those who flee, but the legitimate peace of those who have dominated the internal field. He does not command the world, but commands himself. And that, for the Stoic, is the only victory that really matters. Reacting is human, but not reacting is powerful. The man who does not allow himself to be dragged by every provocation is not repressing himself. He is positioning himself above the game. He realizes that to be predictable is to open gaps to be manipulated. By not reacting, he changes the dynamic. He takes control out of other people's hands and puts it back in his own. His silence is not cowardice, it is command. He decides what deserves his energy and what deserves his absence, and in this choice, he leads. While she waits for the counterattack, he retreats. As the world awaits his response, he offers a steady, restrained presence. He is not silent. It's up. And his calmness restless more than 1,000 words. This quiet steadfastness makes him unpredictable, and unpredictability in a calm man is deeply disconcerting to anyone who tried to test him, because the game only exists when there is a play. And he doesn't play. He is no longer in the arena of emotional dispute. He inhabits the field of clarity. And in this field, only those who understand that respect is non-negotiable can enter. He leads not with voice, but with direction. By not reacting, it becomes a compass, a fixed point in the middle of the hurricane, and every hurricane eventually bends to the force of those who remain standing. For a long time, he believed that staying close was proof of love, that insisting was courage, that tolerating was a virtue. But then, in the silence of his reflections, he understood. The more she tried to control him, the more he moved away from her. And it was at that moment that he woke up. The control she exercised did not come with chains, but with subtle tests, with strategic disappearances, with emotional games disguised as charm. And he, because he still wanted to, gave in. But every time he ignored the signs, he lost a part of himself. Until he decided no more. Freedom is not being far from it, it is being close to yourself. He no longer needed to prove that he deserved respect. He just needed to stop accepting less than he knew he was worth. From that moment on, the scales turned. When she lost control over him, he found back what had always been his, the power of choice. And this choice was for silence, for the calm distance, by the absence full of meaning. She was surprised. He tried to repeat the old patterns, but he did not answer. He didn't question it. He just disappeared, as if he finally understood that he didn't need to be a prisoner of other people's expectations. The free man is the one who does not negotiate his dignity, that you don't beg for space, that doesn't bend down to be seen. He gets up, walks towards what is real, and allows the rest to be left behind, not as revenge, but as liberation. In the absence of external control, true internal control is born. And there, he doesn't just find his freedom, he becomes it. There is a kind of firmness that does not need a high tone of voice. It is perceived in the look, in the posture, in the decision to move away when respect is no longer present. The Stoic man does not demand respect. He withdraws where it does not exist. Before, he accepted small concessions. He closed his eyes to subtle attitudes that deep down screamed devaluation. But now he understood that every time he tolerated disrespect, he taught him how he wanted to be treated. And that's over. Respect is not requested. Respect is imposed with silence, with absence, with choice. He does not extend himself in places where his presence has become customary. He leaves with the serenity of someone who has learned to prioritize his essence. The woman who used to test her limits now feels the absence of something non-negotiable, because he didn't argue, he just acted. There was no need to shout, he just didn't stay, and the strength of this reverberates much more than any speech. The firm man is not proud of his own rigidity, he only knows what he is worth, and because he knows, he does not need to beg for validation. Your coherence is your identity, and your estrangement is the silent signature of those who love each other enough to leave. And when he leaves a lesson. Firmness is not toughness, firmness is clarity, and the clarity of who respects each other is what makes a man impossible to ignore. The world confuses detachment with indifference. But the man who walks the path of stoicism knows that there is a huge difference. He didn't become cold, he just decided not to hurt himself anymore by trying to keep what no longer wanted him whole. Detachment was the most compassionate act he had with himself, because it is not a matter of ceasing to love, but of not abandoning oneself in the name of a feeling that only he sustained. He understood that giving up being hurt is an act of protection, not weakness. She thought he would never leave, that he would always return at the slightest sign of attention. But this time it was different. He didn't warn, he didn't make a scene, it just was. Because he understood that it is not possible to flourish where the land is made of games. To let go for him was to leave the unstable ground and walk back to himself. And on this return, he rediscovered his dignity. Silence was not an absence of feeling, it was a presence of discernment. The end was not emptiness, it was the restart. The woman now feels what he left, a space of integrity, a trail of firmness. Not because he wanted to cause pain, but because he decided not to be the one to build something anymore. Detachment is not the end of affection. It is the beginning of self-love. And the man who understands this does not become less intense, he becomes wiser. There is no louder cry than the absence of those who have left without begging. The man who has learned the value of his own company no longer needs to ask to be retained. He understands that his presence is a privilege, not an insistence. She only understood this when he was already far away, when the spaces once filled by him began to echo with silence. Because he didn't cry, he didn't beg, he didn't insist. He just acknowledged the moment to go. The man who leaves with peace carries with him something that words do not explain, the certainty that it is not worth keeping where there is no true space. He does not demand to be remembered. He becomes unforgettable for the way he decided to go. She feels it, because what he represented is not easily replaced, and the more he tries to rediscover his silent firmness in others, the more he realizes how rare was what he let slip. He did not stop feeling, he just stopped accepting feeling alone. The woman misses not him, but the serenity he brought to the environment, the same that is missing today. The stoic man no longer seeks to remain, he seeks coherence. And if to keep it, you have to leave, he goes. And as he goes, he teaches that true value never needs to be begged. For years he sought approval, in her words, in her gestures, in her selective attention. He thought that being chosen was the pinnacle of love, until one day he understood. Those who seek validation surrender their freedom. This understanding did not come in a snap, but in accumulated pain, in silent rejections, in broken expectations. He realized that every time he asked for recognition, he put his peace in the hands of someone unstable. So he changed, not for revenge, but for healing. He stopped molding himself to please. He stopped forcing conversations. He stopped trying to prove what should be naturally felt. And in that stop, he began to really live. She noticed the change, not as someone who sees an attack, but as someone who witnesses an absence that hurts more than the constant presence. Because he didn't need to be seen anymore, he saw himself. And that changed everything. The absence of need is the greatest sign of self-sufficiency. The man who doesn't need applause lives beyond the stage, and there he becomes strong, not in the scream, but in the stillness, not in dispute, but in conviction. He didn't become better at being noticed, he just became himself, and that in itself is the highest level of quiet strength a man can achieve. Serenity does not need to justify your steps. The man who has found peace within himself does not make speeches to explain his choices. He simply acts in silence, and this stillness, paradoxically, speaks louder than any argument. He understood that proving something to someone is often confessing an insecurity. And as he no longer lives according to the gaze of others, he sees no point in convincing. Who sees, sees. Who does not see, he does not try to open his eyes by force. Instead of staying, he goes. Instead of rebutting, he observes. Instead of explaining himself, he just closes the door and moves on. That doesn't make him cold, it makes him whole, because the greatest demonstration of wisdom is knowing when to withdraw, even with your heart in pieces. She may expect a last line, a last attempt, a justification, but he is no longer moved by expectations. Your silence is your answer. Your departure is your statement. He doesn't have to prove his worth. He lives by it. The serenity of this man is confusing, because she expected noise, conflict, reaction, but all he receives is the void left by someone who has learned to choose himself. And it is in this emptiness that the reflection is born. Why did he leave so calmly? The serene man does not seek impact, but it does. Because in a world where everyone wants to be heard, he chooses to be understood by time and not by arguments. And time always proves right those who did not need to prove anything. The fear of abandonment is born of the lack of inner foundation. But the Stoic man built his foundation on self-knowledge. He is not afraid of being left because he has already learned not to lose himself. And those who have structure do not fall when external support fails. He understood that one's presence should never be the only support for his peace. Therefore, when the threat of the end appears, he does not beg, does not despair, does not panic. It just remains whole. Being left does not dismantle him, because he is not riding on fragile promises or hopes. He is firm ground, and it is on this ground that he steps, even when everything around him seems to crumble. Stability is inside, not outside. She realizes it late, because I expected him to beg, to run after it, to destructure. But he doesn't, and not because he doesn't feel it, but because he feels it without surrendering. Its balance is the shield against any attempt at destabilization. Structured men are not insensitive, they are conscious, and this awareness protects them. When everything collapses, they don't try to sustain what doesn't hold up. They just go on because they know what is solid remains, the rest, the wind, carries away. Having structure is more than being strong. It is to be wise enough to know that the abandonment of others is never greater than the reunion with oneself. There is something curious about absence. It reveals more than constant presence. The man who understands this knows that often his withdrawal is the only way to be truly perceived. To be there all the time is to be predictable. To be absent with purpose is to be unforgettable. He was always there, always accessible, always available. But this made him invisible to the eyes that only see what they miss. So he chose to disappear, not as a game, but as a self-value, because he understood that not every space deserves to be filled all the time. His absence was not an act of contempt, but of dignity. He understood that in order to be valued, he needs to be felt. And to be felt, sometimes it is necessary to step out of the picture and let the silence do the work that the presence failed to accomplish. She only realized how much it filled when there was nothing left in place. It wasn't his voice that was missed. It was the calm, the center, the firmness. It was the security of knowing that he was there, even if he was silent. Now this silence is absence, and this absence is a burden. The Stoic man does not need to make noise to be remembered. Its absence is a presence on another level. Its echo. It is reflection, and it is in this void that he creates the greatest impact, because he doesn't beg to be remembered. He allows himself to be forgotten and lets time prove otherwise. The true presence is the one that continues to be felt even when the body has already departed. And the man who understands this, understands the value of silence itself. Not everyone will understand the firmness of a man who prefers coherence to applause. But the Stoic man does not act to be understood. He acts to be whole. And those who are whole know that clarity itself is more valuable than any acceptance. For a long time, he wanted to be understood. I wanted her to understand the reason for his decisions, how much he gave in, how much he endured. But he realized that the more he explained, the less he was seen. Then he stopped. Not by giving up, but by wisdom. Being misunderstood no longer diverts you from your route. He learned that internal coherence is worth more than external understanding, and that often those who most deserve explanation are those who would least know what to do with it. She may find him cold, indifferent, proud, but he knows that it is nothing like that. He just decided not to bleed to prove that he is injured. His stillness is the result of someone who has tried too hard, and now only tries to be true to himself. Coherence is peace, and the peace that comes from within does not depend on the understanding of others. He walks safely not because everyone supports him, but because he knows where he is going, and that in itself is enough. Being misunderstood is the price of those who do not negotiate their essence. And the man who understands this no longer bends down to be accepted. It remains standing, even if alone. She expected screams, reactions, arguments, but he found silence, a heavy, calm, unshakable silence, the kind of silence that is not built in days, but in convictions. Because the upright man does not respond to tests, he just walks away. He saw the games, he felt the provocations, he identified the manipulations. But instead of entering the theater, he got up and left. His absence was not a retreat. It was a statement. Here, no more. And his silence was not a punishment. It was a reflex, a mirror. And when she found herself without him, she didn't just see the absence of someone. She saw the presence of a structure that she tested and lost. Because the upright man does not bend, it just closes. Testing someone emotionally is an attempt to measure control. But with him, the controller slipped through his hands. Because it is not predictable nor reactive. He is calm, centered, and therefore impossible to manipulate. The stillness of this man turned into a scream, not an external cry, but an internal one within her, a cry that resounded in the form of consciousness, and this awareness hurt more than any fight. He did not return, and that was the biggest impact. Because the upright man, once firm in his essence, never returns to what made him doubt himself.